and welcome to Event Happiness 2019. By the sound of it, you're just as excited to be here as we are in having you here. And for good reason. The tools and the mindsets that we can gain tonight can bring about an internal revolution for complete transformation. We'll start off with some mantra meditation, followed by the talk by Devamrita Swami, and then there will be dinner served outside the theatre. So, what is mantra meditation? All day long, our minds meditate on so many things, often in rapid succession. With mantra meditation, we focus the mind and attention on the sound of mantras. So mantras are not ordinary sounds. They are phrases found in the ancient yoga texts that are full of potency, with the purpose to uplift the consciousness and to allow us to experience life and happiness that's actually beyond the body and the mind. This evening, we'll do this meditation to music. And the mantra will be here on the board in front of us. And Bhakti, over here, will be leading us through the meditation. So how it works is that she will sing through the mantra, and then we all respond. She'll sing again, and then we respond, and we'll continue on like that for around 10 minutes. And so this is not a performance. We're all invited to participate. So we'll start by reading through the mantra, and I'll speak a few of the words, and then you can repeat it after me, and then we'll hand it over to Bhakti. So, are you ready? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare. Hare Hare. Oh, amazing. Okay, so we'll hand it over to Bhakti.
Krishna
Well, thank you to our musical mantra team, and thank you to you. How did you find that? Some nods, some smiles, some kind of undecided. Well, thank you for being brave and giving it a try. It's a little taste. So now we would like to welcome our guest for this evening, Devamrita Swami, born in New York and receiving one of the finest educations that one can buy. Upon graduating from Yale University, the highway to becoming a CEO lay open before him. But he chose to pour his expertise into becoming a monk. A life of compassion followed, demonstrated through his traveling continuously throughout the world and meeting people from all different walks of life and backgrounds and inspiring them. His travels took him to every continent of the world, where he was invited to speak at top universities and management institutes. He's also the author of several books, and nowadays, after around 50 years of traveling, well, not traveling, he considers New Zealand his home, which, luckily for us, is quite close. We do anticipate his visits to Melbourne eagerly, many of us. And tonight, we'll be hearing from him about the hunt for happiness, searching for sustainable happiness. Please join me in welcoming Devamrita Swami.
We have a very serious subject tonight. One that I know you're not interested in because you don't care about happiness. Now, of course, in the core of your being, as you know it, you long to be happy. But tonight we're going to question, what is that happiness that we're pursuing so intensely? The way the pressures of the day are pushing us, it's hard to even find the time and the headspace, the bandwidth, so to speak, to actually think about, what is it that I'm so hungry for? What is it that I'm pursuing with such dedication? I thought about these things during my university days. I wondered, what will my future be? University system in the USA, as many of you know, is not so egalitarian as the Australian system may be. In the USA, you're classified, you're typecast according to what particular institution you have studied in. Most of the presidents of the USA come from either Yale or Harvard. Most of them are educated, except perhaps the present one. And I didn't say that. So I was on track, on career track to have it all. A scholarship student from New York City, the center of the universe, as New Yorkers think. My thinking during my university days was I had to have two things: the highest pleasure and the highest knowledge. I was fortunate enough to understand that the two are related. If you can find the pinnacle of all knowledge, that should lead you to the greatest pleasure. Let's talk about happiness in the ordinary sense now. the ordinary stuff that everyone knows about. First of all, your social relations. That means your sense of belonging. Do you have relationships that you can count on for more than a few months? Then you need, social scientists say, a sense of mastery, especially regarding tasks, activities, engagements that take up most of your day. That means work life. You need to feel that you're competent. You need to feel that you're even the best in your field. One of your graduate students here at University of Melbourne was singing in our mantra music group. And as you could see, and might guess, she's from Laos. So I asked her at one of our smaller gatherings, what was your motivation in Laos? She said, I wanted to be the best. I said, well, the best in relation to what? The best in your hometown? The best in your city? The best in the whole world? She said, no, I just wanted to be the best in Laos. My point is that your sense of mastery is always in relation, it's relative to others. And that may be a problem. In other words, we don't know about self-worth that's not mirrored in the opinions of others. So we have the sense of belonging. You want a partner that you can rely on for a few years. You want friends who will agree with you most of the time. You'd like to have a family somewhere down the line, not all at once, but somewhere down the line, you want to feel that you have expanded your existence by reproducing others. But then there's also a sense of autonomy. You want to feel that you have the skills and the resources to execute whatever option you'd like. You don't want to feel forced into situations in which your options are restricted. You like to travel where you want to travel, live where you want to live, go where you want to go. And in today's society, you got to purchase your freedom when you consider freedom in the ordinary sense. I was speaking in South Africa a few years ago. In case you hadn't guessed it, your announcer, the young lady is from South Africa. That's where I first met her. So I was on my way to a university engagement there, and I happened to see a billboard on the side of the highway quoting Nelson Mandela. There is no such thing as partial freedom. I thought about that and expanded upon that theme in my talk. Partial freedom. He was thinking about it in terms of the political sense. I took it in the existential sense. What is it like to be free beyond politics, beyond economics? The yoga texts, particularly the Bhakti Yoga texts, Bhagavad Gita, give you expansive information about what is real freedom. Because unless there is real freedom, how are we going to get real happiness? So we've described happiness in the ordinary sense. Sense of belonging, sense of mastery, competence, and a sense of autonomy. But what Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita is that how can there be freedom without mind and sense control? In other words, to progress toward happiness, we need prerequisites. It's not that happiness is just something you can pluck out of the sky. It's not that happiness is something that can be fueled by intoxication or even spiced with passionate activity. No, even material happiness requires some prerequisites. Krishna explains there has to be mastery of the mind and senses, because as long as we are subject to the demands of our senses, we're enslaved. And living in a consumer society means we're bombarded at every moment with stimuli, sensory overload, leading to deep dives into sensuality, hoping for satisfaction. So the climb toward even ordinary happiness begins with mastery of the mind and senses. Who's in charge here? Is it me, or are my senses in charge? Why would you even consider mastering the mind and senses unless you had higher knowledge? So that's the next prerequisite Krishna gives on the road to ordinary happiness. My point in explaining this sequence is to show us how far below the bar we are. Later, we may get into non-material happiness. But just to set the scene, we're talking about ordinary happiness, which requires mastery of the mind and senses, and then knowledge of what is higher. Now, sometimes in our frustration due to chasing the phantasmagoria of material happiness, we think, if I can just become numb, maybe do some deep breathing, focus on the incoming and outgoing breath, I'll work my way through any situation, because after all, everything is temporary. In other words, let me do some deep breathing and work my way through a situation knowing it's all temporary. That's true. Everything that's physiological or psychological is temporary. But are we meant to simply become, by deep breathing, stones? No, we're sentient beings. We have consciousness. Of course, many of you know that there is no definition of consciousness that scientists will agree upon. Consciousness is the greatest mystery of Western civilization. Let's consider non-material knowledge as an incentive for having peace. Because what Krishna explains in the prime yoga text Bhagavad Gita is that first there's sense control, then there's the pursuit of non-material knowledge, and then you can have some peace because you have a higher goal. You're not just working your way through a situation. Well, every situation has a lesson to be learned. Maybe you've heard that spiel from this person or that person. Life is all about learning. You're meant to console yourself with that prize. It's a lesson. It's all about living and learning. But what is the lesson we're actually supposed to learn? Many of you are students. You have a definitive plan for your studies, definitive objectives. But if you say life is just about learning, but we don't know what is the lesson, we'll probably have to repeat the course. But that's another subject. Let's just consider one life is all you've got. So there's this urge to just squeeze every moment, right? Social scientists tell us that there are two types of happiness, each according to whether you're young or old. Generally speaking, when you're young, happiness is all about awesome events, awesome experiences, the extraordinary. Wow, that was super. That was really special. So you're like that up until you're about 40 years old. You're on a quest for the magic moment, the bang. But after 40, things start to change. Does anyone here above 40? Things start to change. You start taking your contentment in the ordinary things of life. That's when you know you're getting old. God forbid to take happiness in the ordinary things of life. Sounds like the sunset, doesn't it? The sunset of your life. Right now you're just full of vigor and enthusiasm. You know satisfaction is out there, right? Some of you don't look so sure. So back to that sequence of ordinary happiness. I'm just giving you, along the way, hints of what is beyond the quest for ordinary happiness, the happiness hunt. So control the mind and senses, non-material knowledge, which lifts your vision, and then peace. Because as long as we are subject to artificial desires, how can we be peaceful? And the artificial desires come about because we're so easily agitated unnecessarily because we can't control our minds and senses. So we're fair game to be manipulated. So although during my university years, at first I was very politically engaged, I began to realize that if I can't control my mind and senses, and if I have no program for the people to control their mind and senses, there'll be no end to the manipulation that I'm subject to and the people are subject to. So I concluded that the best thing I could do for myself and for the people in general is to distribute knowledge of mind and sense control, and in that way, we wouldn't be so victimized. Because life in a consumer society means constant victimization. You're constantly victimized by artificial needs. So much so that we can't distinguish between needs and wants. After all, this is not a third world country. That means we expect to do more than survive. We expect to thrive. We expect to flourish. We expect a life of opportunity. And a life of opportunity means options. And options take money. Although money is not important. Many of you are aware of the social science research pointing out that beyond a middle-class standard of living and luxury, any further increase in your financial net worth will not lead to an increase in happiness as measured by standard psychological indicators. If you're in the USA, $75,000 a year. Beyond that, social scientists say you can't bump up your happiness anymore. That would be, what would that be in Australia? 75,000 US?
100,000.
Okay. Just think, if you get that 100,000, anything more, whether it's millions or billions, will not lead to an increase in your subjective state of happiness. But there's fine print. And in the academic world, there's always fine print. There's always some battles going on. No, that can't be completely true, although it's generally accepted. If you've got a lot of money, although your subjective happiness moment to moment doesn't increase, your overall sense of self-worth increases. Now, what's that? Your overall life evaluation that, I'm worth a few million Australian dollars. Yeah, life is good. That feeling of, that self-estimation. Yeah, it's it's quite flimsy, but still something is there. Therefore, social scientists point out, yes, more money can lead to more self-esteem, even though it doesn't lead to more happiness as measured moment to moment. So what do you think? What do you want? It would sound good to feel like your will shall be carried out, yes? I've got millions. How am I going to influence the world so it runs according to my expectations? It's a very flimsy, dodgy feeling. But basically, the relation between income and subjective happiness levels off at 75,000 US, 100,000 Australia. I was speaking about this syndrome at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. That's known as the finest school on the African continent. And I asked the students, as well as the lecturers present in the audience, you all know this research, right? Beyond the basic middle class standard of living, any increased income does not lead to an increase in happiness. He said, yes, yes, Swami, we all know about it. I said, okay. And you know about the fine print, that having some millions does increase your sense of self-worth. Yes, yes, Swami, we all know it. Okay, my dear audience of 500 at the University of Cape Town, how many of you are ready to live your life on a basic middle class standard of living? No one raises their hand. So you see, there's a disconnect. All right, Melbourne's different. There's a disconnect between what we know and our desires. The desire factor of our life is like a monster that can't be controlled. There's a story, a folk tale, about a very rich king. And when he would go out of his palace to tour the kingdom, anyone who begged for anything, he'd give them something. So he came out of his palace with his entourage, his royal entourage, and there was a beggar with a bowl. In Asian countries, monks who beg often have bowls. So the king said to the monk with the beggar's bowl, I'll fill your beggar's bowl with gold coins. The monk didn't say anything. He was detached. The king told his clerk, load up the bowl with gold coins. Clerk did that. Immediately, as soon as the coins entered the bowl, they all disappeared. That didn't faze the king at all. Put more gold coins in there. Each time the clerk put gold coins in the monk's beggar's bowl, everything disappeared. The king was getting frantic about his reputation because he was famous for just being able to give any beggar more money than the beggar could dream of. So the king asked his royal treasurer, bring the jewels, bring the royal jewels, because by that time a crowd had gathered. For the first time, there was a beggar whose bowl couldn't be filled. And no matter how many jewels the king put into the beggar's bowl, again and again, they all kept disappearing. There was just the empty bowl. Finally, the king was broke. No more money in the royal treasury, no more jewels. Crowds of people were watching. The king was totally exasperated. Finally, he decided to ask the monk, what is this bowl? No matter what I put into it, no matter how many gold coins, how many jewels, the wealth disappears. What's the secret to your bowl? The monk with the beggar's bowl looked at him and said, this bowl is human desire. It is never satisfied. So please keep that in mind in your hunt for happiness. Are we chasing something that can never be satisfied, but based on propaganda that's been downloaded into us since birth, we think we see opportunity. It's out there. I have my body, I have my mind. These are instruments meant for hooking up with happiness. And we're kind of sure, right? Others are getting their share of happiness. Surely my share will come. We don't question the product. We've swallowed wholly that happiness, as ordinarily known, is available and it will satisfy me. This is what has been downloaded into us since birth. And we're marching according to that song. Physiological happiness, psychological happiness is substantial, noteworthy, and satisfying. The yoga texts, however, particularly the Bhakti Yoga texts like Bhagavad Gita, throw this out. They don't just tell you to breathe deeply, work your way through it, it's all temporary. That is true, but if we're going to fulfill our mandate as sentient beings, we have to find out what satisfies consciousness. So therefore, the Bhakti Yoga knowledge begins with teaching us that consciousness is indicative of a non-material reality, and that as conscious entities will only be satisfied in connection with supreme consciousness. Let's take another look at happiness as ordinarily known. We spoke about how there are prerequisites even for the ordinary stuff of happiness. You have to be the master of your mind and senses. You have to have motivation from non-material knowledge so that your goal is higher, your aspirations are higher, and you have to be peaceful. So we were explaining, how can we be peaceful if we're always chasing what is artificial? To become immune to manipulation, whether it's political or economic or sensual manipulation, we have to be the master of our mind and senses. We need knowledge of what is beyond the temporary. Then we're peaceful. So Krishna finally explains, if you've got all of that, then you can know about ordinary happiness. But the goal of Bhakti Yoga For those of you who have studied Bhagavad Gita, the preliminary text, you know the goal is beyond material happiness. And once we start dealing with non-material happiness, then we can understand what is sustainable happiness. So the intelligent person understands that the ordinary quest for happiness, as especially known in the Western world, is destroying the earth. We are pushing on a version of an economy that doesn't take nature into consideration. You can call it an extractive economy. Not simply Australia, the world's greatest exporter of coal and number 2 in liquefied gas, but all over the world. Extraction, that's the basis of the economy. Does nature exist? Sustainable happiness includes nature as well as other living beings. In other words, our quest for happiness is really about all my relations, all my connections. So sustainable happiness contributes to the well-being of the individual, the community, and the whole planet. The negative would be that sustainable happiness is not at the expense of other human beings, other species, future generations, and the environment. If we're going to be genuinely happy in a sustainable way, we've got to take into account all those relations, all those connections. Then we're ready to consider, what is my happiness footprint? My happiness footprint involves my impact on nature, my relations with other living entities, not just humans. And what about future generations? Is my pursuit of happiness terrorizing future generations of human beings? Intergenerational tyranny. Am I getting happiness today in a way that ruins the happiness for the children growing up now, what they'll experience 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now? I have to consider that. To be able to truly see the impact of our happiness footprint, we require clear vision. That clear vision comes from more than just deep breathing. It's wonderful to calm yourself down, but for a lasting solution, for a proper glimpse of what sustainable happiness is, we need clarity of consciousness. So here we have not only the focus on the toxicity of the environment, we have to also cope with the toxicity of our own consciousness. So the yoga texts consider that consciousness is primary. It's not that consciousness is added in to the physical universe afterwards. No, the yoga texts begin with the foundation that consciousness is primary and indicative of the non-material self, the non-material reality, and the supreme consciousness. So many persons are practicing yoga. This is wonderful. Let's consider that the actual meaning of the Sanskrit word yoga is connection, to link up. To connect with what, though? At this stage of planetary development, it's time for human beings to consider the fullness of the yoga system, going beyond just what you might call buffet yoga. I'll take this and I'll leave that. And Let's get to the root. What is the ultimate connection that the yoga system is aiming for? Then we can understand what is sustainable happiness. Otherwise, we're subject to hallucinations and mirages that drive our life. Yes, it's the fault of the society that we live in, but we also have to share the blame because we have not put enough time into self-mastery and understanding non-material knowledge. Therefore, we're so easily victimized, and we pursue what is a dream that never delivers. To admit such a thing, though, takes courage. Just think. I know some of you have thought of these conclusions before. Would you dare, at a gathering of your mates, of your family, colleagues, would you ever dare to say that you are suspicious of the goal known as material happiness? People would consider there's something wrong with you. Just keep trying, keep struggling. You'll score. Things will work out. Do some deep breathing. You work your way through it. It's all temporary. Yes, it's all temporary, but is there something else you should be doing? Yes, indeed there is something else. The advanced texts, once you work your way through Bhagavad Gita, the prime Bhakti Yoga text, teach you that a deer is thirsty for water. Right at the feet of the deer is water, hidden or partially obscured by clumps of grass or bushes. The deer, however, races out into the desert looking for water, and in this way destroys itself. So what is that water that's right at the feet of the deer, but apparently partially obscured? That is the non-material happiness. It seems like a special endeavor is necessary, whereas material happiness looks so accessible, doesn't it? All you have to do is this, all you have to do is that, just like in the movies. That's what my life should be about. Success will come, at least to some degree, if I just persevere. Everyone else is getting happiness, why not me? I should get my share. So there's not so much doubt about the goal, there's just doubt about maybe my ability to get what everyone else has. But the yoga texts teach us, doubt the goal. But then we're a little afraid of that. Because if I doubt the goal, if I start questioning the mirage, if I stop racing out into the desert looking for water, what am I going to do? Now consider, we'll get into some advanced knowledge here, the deeper end of the pool. The yoga texts explain that your happiness and distress in this life is prepackaged. That's hard for not only Western people to swallow, it's even hard for people in the East to swallow, because we're so programmed to go for it. Make your life. Earn your options. Pull yourself up and walk forward. Don't be fatalistic. So what do the yoga texts mean by your happiness and distress being prepackaged? You have to understand something about karma. Every action having a reaction. Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that the very body and mind you have is a karmic reaction. That's why you see differences in physiology and psychology among various persons. Their karma is different. Prepackaged happiness and distress doesn't mean everything is predetermined. It simply means that the happiness or distress delivered to you in this life is already pre-measured according to your karma from your previous existences. Sometimes people misunderstand this yogic axiom. They think predestined happiness and distress means everything is predetermined. But look, let's say Joe is with Jane. And after a while, Joe decides, Jane, the thrill is gone. We've been together for a few months. It's been good. Really, the problem is not you, it's me. I know. Have you ever done that one? The humble way of backing out the door of a relationship? I know it's me. I've got issues. So Joe doesn't get the magic anymore from Jane, but he assumes that Jill, yes, she'll be the flame. So the next question usually comes my way is, was it predetermined that I dropped Jane and went for Jill? I explained, no. But according to the yoga knowledge, the happiness that you're going to get in your relationships, whether it's with Jill or Jane, that's predetermined. Ugh. In other words, you've got a karmic burden. You may transfer it from the right shoulder to the left shoulder, but you still got the burden. Although with your tiny independence, you've changed shoulders that you're carrying the burden with. It's kind of subtle. So in other words, you can change your life situations, but you can't change the packet of happiness that you're due. This is a bit foreign, not only for Western ears, as I explained, but also for Eastern ears. But just think, how many of you long for distress? Do we have anyone here who works hard to acquire distress? Even if you're a masochist, you want to enjoy in that way. All respect for all types, different strokes for different folks. When I was living in Copenhagen, I lived on every continent in the world for 40 years. When I was living in Copenhagen, we had a Bhakti Yoga Center there, and there was a knock on the door because we were new neighbors. And at the door, when I opened it, was a middle-aged man and woman, very nice, very respectable. And they introduced themselves. Oh, we heard that you're our new neighbors. We'd like to let you know that we're from your local masochist society, and we're here for you. So I politely excused myself. I thank you for greeting us, but not today. So even if you're a masochist, you don't want distress. You want happiness through masochism. So you here don't long for distress. It still comes your way. This is what the yogis will point out. Although you don't long for distress, it still comes. Therefore, touché! Whether you long for happiness or not, you'll get your share. Think deeply about that. You don't long for distress, but it comes. So what if you stop longing for material happiness? It'll still come according to your just deserts, according to your karma. And time is the courier system that delivers your packet of happiness and distress. So what to do? Just tolerate this delivery system? I'm going to get a certain amount of happiness, a certain amount of distress. That's the way it is. True, but only partially true. The goal of human life is not simply to become numb like a stone and tolerate the deliveries of happiness and distress. The goal is to rise above those deliveries. That's why we need knowledge of the non-material self and the supreme conscious self. Here we have the purpose of the yoga system. that ultimate connection, the love supreme. We are searching for happiness because we are part of the ultimate source, which is the source of all pleasure and happiness. Because we are tiny particles, we have that same drive. But because we're so tiny, we have to rely on what is outside of ourselves to be happy. And that's very risky, as you've already experienced. To go outside of yourself for pleasure, fulfillment, and satisfaction is such a dangerous journey. You always meet with the unexpected, with disappointment, insufficiency. You all know what relationships are like when you expect a person to be your source of contentment. You know what that's like. But did you ever think, this person is too tiny to give me what I want? No. Instead, you blame the other person. What's wrong with you? You're not the way you used to be. You're not meeting my needs. You're not understanding me. How about, you're just too tiny? You would never say that. So we, as tiny particles of spiritual consciousness, cannot be independent and self-sufficient in our quest for pleasure. We have to connect to the supreme source of pleasure. This is the knowledge that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita. As long as we, on our own, are seeking pleasure in a material way, we'll be disappointed. Some of you here for our previous lecture last year may remember some knowledge that so closely parallels yogic knowledge. Knowledge stumbled upon by Nobel Prize winners in behavioral economics. If any of you want the cutting edge field for your studies, behavioral economics, the combination of the two, psychology and economics, very powerful. They've discovered that most of what human beings call happiness is anticipatory. Therefore, they come up with the fancy term of emotional forecasting. Your happiness is so much composed of anticipation. I can just feel it now. When the weekend comes, I've got good things planned. When I finish school, when I get the dream job and I'm with the dream person and going to dream places, I can just feel it now. So much of our so-called happiness is all about anticipation. We emotionally forecast. Just like the weather report. What's the weather report for Sunday? You see, coming up ahead, happiness opportunities, and that's most of the buzz, most of the bang. So what do these Nobel Prize winning social scientists explain? That you always overshoot the mark in your emotional forecasting. Things don't turn out to have the same bang that you anticipated. But because we're addicted to chasing the mirage, we can't decouple from this hallucinatory process. Again and again, we make the same mistake, racing out into the desert looking for water and neglecting the water right at our feet that seems to be a little obscured by the grass, by the bushes. What's really interesting is that these Nobel Prize winners admit that they study this syndrome day after day, but they themselves still fall victim to it. In other words, you may know about it, but unless you can control your mind and senses through superior knowledge and experience, that means superior lifestyle, you'll still fall victim to it again and again. The mirage is that powerful. So this is why The genuine yogis turn to a non-material lifestyle as the best way to live for truly sustainable happiness. And remember, sustainable happiness means my endeavors for happiness will not exploit other human beings, other species, future generations, or the environment. The yogi is trained to see interdependence, interrelationship in all endeavors. We need those kind of sustainable happiness champions to demonstrate to human society that there is a different way of living, how to be in harmony with all living entities, how to not ruin the world for future generations, how to have an economy that acknowledges that nature exists, how not to slaughter animals for the so-called well-being of humans. The yogi sees the full picture because the genuine yogi is taking knowledge from that ultimate conscious source. You'll be happy to know a point I often explain speaking at universities, that nowhere in that prime Bhakti Yoga text, Bhagavad Gita, does Krishna ask you to believe. Everywhere in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna presents, here is the process, here is the methodology, apply it, and these are the results you get. So especially when I'm speaking in the USA, known in the Australian media as that religious country with lots of nuclear weapons. When I'm speaking at universities in the USA, I know there's paranoia amongst the students. Uh-oh, he's a Swami. Okay, that's cool. He went to Yale. Oh, super. But is he going to hit us with religion? I don't run into the same problem in Australia because few care about religion here. And you don't have any nuclear weapons. So, nowhere in Bhagavad Gita does Krishna ask you to believe. Everywhere, process and methodology is given. Take this knowledge, transform your lifestyle, and then you'll be able to have the clarity of vision to understand and experience the non-material self in relation to the supreme spiritual self. You'll be able to see how the two are always connected. The part is always connected to the complete whole. You'll be able to see the whole package and understand your proper functioning in the whole system. So we like to talk about being holistic. Holistic health, holistic food, holistic relationships. But how can we truly be holistic without our having knowledge of the complete whole? So this is where the yoga and meditation system is ultimately leading to. Knowledge and experience of the ultimate. But that takes lifestyle transformation. So if we're going to have a genuine lifestyle transformation, we have to deal with our happiness quest, the hunt for happiness. How can I strive for sustainable happiness? Otherwise, my vision will always be clouded with artificial desires and the karmic reactions from injuring other living entities, injuring the future for the generations to come, destroying the environment. My quest for happiness involves all my relations, all my connections, and especially I require knowledge of that whole scenario coming from the ultimate source of consciousness. So this is what truly makes the yoga knowledge unique. This is what makes for truly distinctive lifestyles. Not fragmentation and artificial disconnection. Not sentiment, but actual knowledge and experience. Then we can go far beyond the plagued quest for material happiness. Sustainable happiness means non-material happiness. That kind of happiness is there in the relationship between the tiny particle of spiritual consciousness that we are, regardless of the bodies we're wearing, in connection with the supreme consciousness, that ultimate source that we are all related to. So in this way, the yoga knowledge and the yoga experience takes us far beyond the plagued and faulty quest of chasing the mirage of material happiness. But we won't give it up unless there's something better. We talked about many aspects tonight. Maybe you have some questions. Right there, to your right.
My question would be related to the last thing you said about actual knowledge and experience, so you mean the experience of the mastery of the mind and the senses, right? So basically my question, let me go immediately to my question, it's just like, where does everything you've kind of taught us tonight sit with loneliness? Because the mastery of mind and so is an internal process. We are still materialistically here as material. We are flesh and blood. We are here. And unless somebody somehow devotes their rest of their lives of really meditation, isolation, neuroscientifically, it's proven that when we are not in touch with human beings, when we're isolated, when we are alone, no matter how much we can master the mind, it will affect us. And it can lead to diseases and earlier deaths and things like that. So where does this sit first?
I'm here with you. I'm not in a cave. I'm not on top of the Himalayas, you know. That's why tonight we've been talking about connections, connectivity and relationships.
See, you're one of the very, very fortunate who...
No. I'm very selfish. Listen.
Of your what you love, what you actually desired probably in your life, of giving your knowledge, of making these connections and making these travels and making these connections with the whole world, actually.
Every field needs its specialists. Just like at University of Melbourne, you have students and you have lecturers. Not every student is going to become a lecturer. Still, the students benefit by hearing from the lecturer. So, all right, I'm a monk, I'm a Swami. I wanted to be a specialist in higher pleasure. But we don't expect everyone to want to be such a specialist. But you need a few of them, don't you? But that doesn't mean that we shut down the university because not everyone's becoming a specialist or a lecturer. So I'm doing my share. If you do your share, as I explained in all the aspects discussed tonight, if we do our share, then the world will be a much better place. So we don't want everyone to be a specialist, but at the same time, some can choose that. But if the people in general understand the way to have real freedom, not just partial freedom, if they understand the need to reclaim their true autonomy and individuality by controlling their mind and senses, by abandoning the quest for hallucinogenic happiness, then you'll see relief for the planet Earth. Otherwise, it will be the same old story repeated again and again. Just like the recently deceased scientist Stephen Hawking said, face it, we've trashed the Earth planet. The only solution is to go to another planet. Now, what's going to happen if that is possible? We ship out to another planet, with the same consciousness, we'll trash that planet too. So therefore, we need to do our homework. And that's the point I hope to gently and humbly leave with you tonight. Way in the back. Do you see way in the back? Well, keep on going, keep walking, walking. Run, run, run. He sees you now.
Thank you so much for your talk. I really enjoyed it. Can you hear me?
I'm looking where you are. Where are you?
Here.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you.
All of the chairs for me.
Yeah, turquoise dress.
Well, thank you very much for your words. I've been a yoga teacher most of my life, so I understand what you're saying very well and very deeply. Well, I'm not a student anymore, but I consider myself a student all my life. So I came here to listen to you, and I've got a sincere question. So, of course, I know about Bhakti Yoga. What do you think about Jnana Yoga, which is another path in the Upanishads? And thank you.
Very nice question. Jnana Yoga, she's using Sanskrit terminology. Jnana means knowledge, metaphysical analysis. With your intelligence, and this is Jnana Yoga, you can understand that there must be something that doesn't change, although the body and mind are always changing. Pursue that line of thought further, and the Jnana Yogi starts to understand there is the temporary and there is the eternal. We want that Jnana Yogi, as Bhagavad Gita explains, to go to the conclusion. What is the source of the temporary and the eternal, and what is your relationship with that source? Therefore, you'll find in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains, after many births and deaths of metaphysical theorization, the Jnana Yogi finally understands that there's the ultimate source of all energies and seeks connection with that ultimate source. Therefore, bhakti, or Krishna consciousness, is the culmination of all the yoga systems. It's the top rung on the yoga ladder. Very nice question, thank you. Yes?
I have a very strong realization that I am essentially non-physical, but at this moment I have a physical carriage in this dimension. I look at detachment, the conclusion I've come to is that this is special and temporary. How do I savor the physicality, this short period that I have visiting here, and enjoy it fully? Where's the balance between savoring this and enjoying the senses, the touch, the smell, the taste, hot, cold, knowing that it is limited, and when my time is up, that who I essentially am will leave this carriage? How does that, I have no issue with connection and the loneliness, but I have this increased appreciation for wanting to savor my physicality without being overly attached to it.
Consider that you're wearing clothes, but you're not the clothes.
Yes.
So you have more important goals and more important opportunities for pleasure than physicality. This is hard to understand at first, and it can sound very threatening. Wait a minute, Swami. Now, yeah, I don't mind being a bit spiritual, but are you kind of, denying all opportunities for physicality?
I'm just wondering why bother being physical when essentially I'm not that.
Brilliant conclusion.
And while I am, how do I make it?
What is the purpose?
Yes.
The yoga text would say, what's the purpose of your physical machinery?
Yes.
It's for enlightenment, for the ultimate pleasure. But we have this fear that in going to the highest, I'll miss out on some good stuff on the lower levels. No, if you've got the superior, as Krishna explains in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, when you taste the superior, you automatically let go of the inferior. Let's say, one more example. Let's say, I hope no one keeps a bird in a cage, but for those who have pet birds in cages, suppose you spent your whole time polishing the cage of the bird and not feeding the bird. Similarly, if we consider this body as our main focus in life, we've missed the point. We've neglected our true non-material self. So it's all about prioritization, not neglecting maintaining the body. I take care of my body. I exercise. I eat properly. But I know it's a machine. Now you say, well, what about the physical opportunities for enjoyment that the body may present? Just consider, if, as Krishna says, there is the higher pleasure, and your life is full of that, you don't have time, you don't have space in your cup for the lower stuff. And that lower stuff involves karmic reactions, which hit you sooner or later. So the genuine yogi sees that every action has a reaction. So in my quest for what many people consider routine pleasure, there are kickbacks. And I don't want that.
I'm what you consider older, so I seek pleasure in the smallest things. And I've spent 3 years holding eye-gazing workshops where we sit, there's no touch, there's no words, we just sit and look at each other. And I've experienced more intimacy in those encounters than what is typically considered intimacy.
Very good, very good, very good. Now go deeper.
But what I'm saying is I've had that realization.
Okay, go deeper. Very good. We have a special gift for you tonight. One last question. Yes, right here in the front. Blue shirt.
Thanks for your talk. I've seen the hollowness of pursuing material happiness. And I've also been lucky enough to be exposed to teachers like yourself and different books. But what I found is that, and what I wonder is this talk of a deeper happiness or the more profound realization, whether it's enlightenment or whatever word it takes, does this, for me, I feel like sometimes it will just take the form of another desire. I just feel that, you talk about this is a deeper pleasure, so I sort of carry over the same framework that I was applying to material happiness and then transfer it over into the spiritual realm. And no matter how sort of profound the words sound, I wonder, is it just another desire?
Yes, it is another desire, a desire of another type. Because you, as a sentient being, cannot extinguish desire. Desire is the symptom of the non-material self. So what you want to do is get rid of the artificial desires and revive the real desire of the non-material self, which is to exist in harmony with the Supreme Spiritual Self. This is the knowledge that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita. You can't kill desire. It's like trying to grease down the tail of a dog. No matter how much grease you put on the dog's tail, boom, it'll pop up again. As a sentient being, you're a desire entity. So what is the perfection of desire? Since you cannot kill desire, you can spend lifetimes focusing on your incoming and outgoing breath, but you'll still have desire. So therefore, how to desire in the perfect way? Because desire is the symptom of your non-material self. Higher than that, deeper than that, is the knowledge that the ultimate source is the supreme desirer. And you, as a particle of that ultimate source, also have the desire capability, just like a drop of seawater has saltiness because it's part of the whole ocean that is salty. But you will always be the particle. You can't become the complete whole. You're not one of those who thinks that you're moving the sun and the moon, are you? Oh, yeah. You get a few of those every time, but you're a tiny particle. But if you would discover the spiritual power of your non-material self in relation to the Supreme Spiritual Self, that power is beyond human calculation. It's a very good question. Sometimes I speak. I believe I've spoken at the University of Melbourne on the theme, the fire of desire.
Thank you.
How are we doing for time? I'd like to ask your participation in just a brief mantra meditation. I hope that I've given enough equity, as it said, that you'll feel motivated to participate. As you heard in the very beginning by our announcer, the mantra meditation is not just ordinary sound. I'd like you to participate in that experience just for a few minutes. I promise it'll do you no harm. And it could open up new pathways for you, even just by your investing your heart into this mantra music for a few minutes. So please, I beg for your participation. More important than the musicality actually is the sincerity of the heart. The mantra is a call for clearing the mind so that the ultimate connection, Krishna consciousness, can manifest. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much.